Now on BBC One, the lunchtime news with Sean Lay.
Good afternoon. The government says it's on track to ease the lockdown in England and deliver on its vaccination targets. The Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, says he's confident a further lockdown can be avoided as long as people don't treat the easing of restrictions as a complete free-for-all. Meanwhile, the First Minister for Wales, Mark Drakeford, revealed there had been high-level talks across the four nations of the UK about the idea of a so-called vaccine passport. Political correspondent Jessica Parker reports.
Teeing off the next phase, outdoor sports facilities can open in England tomorrow. Up to 6 people or 2 households can meet outdoors. This minister speaking of caution but also confidence that another lockdown can be avoided.
Ahead of each easing, we'll of course analyse the situation. We've set out these 4 key tests.
These things could be delayed.
Well, of course they could be delayed if the situation deteriorates, but at the moment we are on track. So thanks to the work of the British people and the excellent vaccine rollout, we are confident both in going ahead with the easings from tomorrow and the next stages.
Shops that have been shut, it's hoped, can open from April 12th. Pubs could welcome customers indoors from May 17th. All legal limits on social contact could be lifted after June 21st. Just some of the hoped-for steps ahead, but an expectation cases may rise as rules are relaxed.
The question is whether or not those increasing cases will translate into a large number of hospitalisations and deaths. Now, I'm pretty optimistic about this. I think the readout on the performance of the vaccines is excellent and very encouraging, but we have to be careful. There's no question that some of the more pessimistic scenarios out there do allow for a significant third wave, so that's something we have to continue to guard against.
Could getting these taps flowing again also include so-called vaccine passports, certification, proving someone's had, say, a test or vaccine. As a review looks at the idea, high-level talks involving all 4 nations have been taking place.
I think there are definitely prizes to be won through domestic vaccine certification, but there are some very big practical and ethical challenges to face as well.
Some further freedom in Wales yesterday as travel restrictions within its borders were lifted. But with concerns over rising cases in parts of the continent, that's one reason that the outlook is still, to some extent, uncertain. Jessica Parker, BBC News.
People aged 50 and over who've yet to have their first coronavirus vaccination are being urged to book appointments this week before a possible slowdown in the availability of doses after Easter. Our health correspondent Naomi Grimley is here. Naomi.
Yes, well, the government wants to focus minds because take-up for vaccines has been phenomenal for the over 70s, but not so good for the 50-somethings and 60-somethings. And it's happening against the backdrop of worries about supplies. We know a consignment from India was put on hold, and that means that the government really wants the over 50s to get their jabs in before those issues become more serious. They will only be temporary because the Moderna vaccine is due to come online next month.
Given though there is this temporary slowdown in supply, at least through April, how come we've got this call just today from charities saying to the government you need to do more to provide doses to some of the poorer countries in the world?
Well, this is charities like Save the Children and the Wellcome Trust. Part of their argument is ethical, that you need to vaccinate healthcare workers in poorer countries, not just everybody in richer countries. But they're also arguing that if you have large reservoirs of the virus overseas in places like Brazil, you'll see more variants, it will be a bigger challenge for the vaccines, and the whole pandemic will be prolonged.
Yeah, Grimley, thank you very much. In other news, there's been widespread international condemnation of Myanmar after the military there shot and killed more than 100 of its own civilian people. Defence chiefs from 12 countries, including the United States, Britain and Japan, have issued a joint statement saying armed forces should protect rather than harm the people they serve. Yesterday was the deadliest since the military coup in Myanmar 8 weeks ago. Our correspondent Laura Bicker is monitoring the situation from neighbouring Thailand. She sends us this report from Bangkok.
The protests may be smaller in number, but the pro-democracy chants were just as defiant. A few dozen people braved the march through this city in the south of Myanmar, a remarkably peaceful demonstration after a brutal 24 hours. Over 100 people lost their lives yesterday. Trained security forces across the country turned their guns on unarmed civilians. Some protesters appear to have constructed their own homemade weapons to retaliate. Throughout the day, the death toll mounted, along with international condemnation. The US Secretary of State said he was horrified and that the courageous people of Burma rejected the military's reign of terror. But the general who seized power last month, Min Aung Hlaing, did not respond. His regime has already been hit by some sanctions, but now there are calls for more coordinated action.
So just, the $1 billion alone each year go into the pockets of the generals from the oil and gas industry. If we were to stop that flow of oil and gas revenue into their pockets, that would make a big difference.
UN Security Council sanctions would require Russia's signature. And here is Moscow's Deputy Defence Minister with a front row seat at yesterday's Armed Forces Day parade. Russia is an important source of their weapons. Diplomats from 8 other countries also attended, including from China. The general still has friends, but not amongst the vast majority of its people who are determined to defy their military rulers. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Bangkok.
A second MP has defected from the SNP to join the new pro-independence party launched by Alex Salmond, the former Scottish First Minister. Neil Harvey, who represents Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath in the Westminster Parliament, follows the former Justice Secretary Kenny McCaskill, who announced yesterday he would stand as a candidate for the Alba Party. Police in Manchester have arrested 18 people who blocked tram lines, part of a protest against the government's police and crime bill. Greater Manchester Police said the event was largely peaceful, but significant disruption was caused by demonstrators sitting on the Metrolink line. Protests were also held in Bath, Falmouth, Nottingham, Sheffield, Brighton and Cambridge. Another attempt is being made later this afternoon to refloat the cargo ship blocking the Suez Canal. With hundreds of vessels stuck either side of it, Egyptian President al-Sisi has ordered preparations for cargo be lifted off the Ever Given. Here's Helena Wilkinson.
It's still stuck. This huge container vessel remains stubborn, refusing to move. 14 tugboats have been used to pull and push this 400-metre-long ship. They've managed a small victory, moving it 30 degrees. Sand has also been dredged to try to dislodge it, and water has now started running underneath it. But at some point, probably soon, they may have to bring in specialist equipment, including cranes, to start removing containers. The Ever Given got stuck on Tuesday. This satellite image shows the wedged container ship, and around it more than 300 cargo ships left waiting. One boat's refusal to budge has crippled global supply chains, 12% of which pass through this canal.
It's billions of trade held up every single day. So it's a huge effect on the global economy, and it's affecting a lot of different supplies.
And you can see more on all of today's stories over on the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 5:30. Until then, have a good afternoon.